In the misty heights of the Andes, where ancient stones whisper secrets of a lost empire, two weathered souls embark on a journey that defies time and gravity. Their wrinkled hands, map-like with the tributaries of a life fully lived, grasp walking sticks hewn from gnarled wood. Eyes that have witnessed decades of change now widen with wonder at the looming silhouette of Machu Picchu. This is not merely a trek. It's a pilgrimage of the heart, a testament to dreams that refuse to wither with age. Join us as we follow Alberto and Elena, grandparents from Lima, as they ascend not just a mountain, but the pinnacle, their shared existence. Before we continue this extraordinary tale, take a moment to subscribe to our channel. By clicking that button, you're not just following a story, you're joining a community that celebrates the indomitable human spirit. Don't let this journey pass you by. Subscribe now and be part of something truly inspiring. In a quaint apartment in Lima, where the walls are adorned with faded photographs and the air is thick with the aroma of memories, sits Alberto. His once robust frame now stoops slightly, like a tree bent by years of gentle winds. Beside him, Elena, her silver hair a crown of wisdom, thumbs through a dog-eared travel magazine. Their eyes meet over an image of Machu Picchu. A silent conversation passing between them. Do you remember me, amor? Alberto's voice creaks like an old door opening to reveal treasured relics. The day we first spoke of this dream? Elena's laugh is a soft chime, resonating with years of shared joy. How could I forget? We were barely more than children ourselves. Memory unfurls like a delicate scroll. They were newlyweds, their future stretching before them like an uncharted map. Alberto, a junior accountant with aspirations that soared beyond balance sheets, had stumbled upon a documentary about the ancient Incan citadel. That night, as they lay in their narrow bed, dreams intertwining like vines, he whispered to Elena of terraced hills and enigmatic ruin. One day, it promised, his voice full of youthful certainty, we will stand there together, touching the sky. But life, as it often does, had other plan. Children came, bringing with them a cacophony of joys and responsibility. Alberto's career demanded long hours, while Elena's world revolved around their growing family. The dream of Machu Picchu, once vibrant, faded like an old photograph left too long in the sun. Years passed, marked by birthdays, graduations, and eventually, grandchildren. Alberto and Elena found themselves in the autumn of their lives, surrounded by the fruits of their labor, feeling a peculiar emptiness. It was their eldest granddaughter, Lucia, who unknowingly rekindled the long-dormant spark. Abuela, abuelo, she had asked one lazy Sunday afternoon, her eyes wide with curiosity. Have you ever seen Machu Picchu? The question hung in the air like mist, slowly seeping into their consciousness. Alberto and Elena exchanged glances, a lifetime of unspoken words passing between them. In that moment, something shifted. Tectonic plates realigning after centuries of stillness. No, mija, Alberto had replied, his voice thick with sudden realization. But perhaps it's time we did. And so, the seed of a dream, long buried but never truly forgotten, began to germinate once more. The decision to embark on this journey was not made lightly. Alberto and Elena, now in their 70s, faced a mountain of challenges, before they could even think of facing the actual mountain. Their living room became a war room, strewn with travel guides, medical reports, and lists upon lists of things to consider. Dr. Mendoza, their longtime physician, peered at them over his spectacles with a mixture of concern and admiration. You understand the risks? He asked, his pen tapping a staccato rhythm on their medical charts. The altitude alone. Life is a risk, doctor, Elena interrupted, voice gentle but firm. We've spent too long playing it safe. Alberto nodded, his arthritic hands clasped tightly in his lap. We're not asking if we can do this. We're asking how. And so began months of preparation. Early morning walks in the park transformed into rigorous hikes on the outskirts of Lima. Their diets, already restricted by age and health concerns, became even more regimented. Vitamin supplements and altitude sickness medications joined their daily regimen of pills. Their children, initially skeptical, soon rallied around them with a fervor that matched their own. Juan, their eldest, researched the best guides and accommodations. Maria, always the worrier, insisted on daily check-ins during their training. Even little Lucia, not so little anymore at 15, contributed by teaching her grandparents how to use a smartphone to stay connected. But as the departure date loomed closer, doubts began to creep in like evening shadows. Elena found herself awake in the small hours, her mind racing with worst-case scenarios. What if they couldn't make it? What if they let everyone down? What if Alberto, sensing her unrest, would pull her close, his embrace a fortress against the night's whispers? "Do you remember?" he'd murmur, his breath warm against her ear. "The day we decided to have our first child? We were terrified then, too." Elena would chuckle softly, the sound muffled against his chest. "We were so young, so unprepared. And yet, look at the life we built," Alberto would continue, his voice growing stronger with each word. "This is no different, mi amor. It's just another adventure." As dawn broke, painting the sky in hues of hope, their resolve would strengthen once more. They'd rise, joints creaking in protest, and begin their daily routine. Each step, each breath was a small victory, a testament to their determination. The day before their departure, they gathered their family for a farewell dinner. The table groaned under the weight of Elena's cooking, a feast of memories and flavors. As they ate, stories flowed like wine, laughter echoing off the walls. When the meal was done, Alberto stood, his glass raised high. "To dreams," he toasted, his voice wavering slightly with emotion. "May we always have the courage to chase them." As their family cheered, Elena caught Alberto's eye across the table. In that moment, she knew, whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, just as they always had. The journey to Machu Picchu begins long before one sets foot on the ancient stones. For Alberto and Elena, it started with a pre-dawn ride to Jorge Chávez International Airport. The streets of Lima still slumbering under a blanket of fog. Their grandchildren had insisted on accompanying them, turning the departure into a small parade of sleepy faces and excited whispers. As they checked in, the young airline attendant did a double take, her professional smile faltering for a moment. "Machu Picchu?" she asked, unable to keep the surprise from her voice as she looked at the elderly couple before her. Alberto straightened his back, standing as tall as his years would allow. "Yes," replied, a twinkle in his rheumy eyes. "We're not as young as we used to be, but neither is Machu Picchu. We'll get along fine." The flight to Cusco was a study in contrasts. While other passengers dozed or thumbed through magazines, Alberto and Elena sat rigid in their seats, eyes glued to the window. As the plane soared over the Andes, the majestic peaks piercing through clouds like islands in a cotton sea, Elena reached for Alberto's hand. No words were needed. Press of palm against palm spoke volumes. Cusco, the ancient capital of the Inca Empire, greeted them with thin air and thick history. As they stepped off the plane, the altitude hit them like a physical force. Alberto stumbled slightly, and for a heart-stopping moment, Elena feared their journey might end before it truly began. But then he straightened, took a deep breath, nodded. "Onward," he said, his voice rough but determined. Their guide, a young man named Mateo, with eyes as dark and deep as Incan legends, met them at the airport. His initial skepticism at guiding such elderly clients quickly gave way to respect as he observed their quiet determination. "We'll take it slow," he assured them, his Spanish tinged with the musical lilt of his Quechua ancestry. "The mountains have stood for millennia. They can wait a few more hours for us." The drive to Ollantaytambo, where they would catch the train to Machu Picchu, was a journey through time. As their van wound through the sacred valley, Alberto and Elena pressed their faces to the windows like excited children. Every terraced hillside, every traditionally dressed local, every glimpse of snow-capped peaks in the distance elicited soft gasps of wonder. "Look, mi amor," Elena would whisper, pointing out a particular view or interesting sight. And Alberto would lean close, their heads touching, sharing the moment as they had shared a lifetime. The train ride from Ollantaytambo to Aguascalientes, the town at the foot of Machu Picchu, was a feast for the senses. The narrow-gauge railway hugged the contours of the Urubamba River, the sacred river of the Incas. As the landscape changed from highland plateau to cloud forest, Alberto and Elena sat in comfortable silence, hands clasped, drinking in every detail. It was late afternoon when they finally arrived in Aguascalientes. The small town, nestled in a deep gorge below Machu Picchu, hummed with the energy of travelers from around the world. As they checked into their modest hotel, exhaustion finally began to catch up with them. The day's journey, though covering a relatively short distance, had been an emotional marathon. That night, as they lay in bed listening to the rush of the Urubamba River outside their window, Elena turned to Alberto. "Are you afraid?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alberto was quiet for a long moment, and Elena thought he might have fallen asleep. But then he spoke, words slow and measured. "I'm afraid of many things, mi amor. I'm afraid of not being strong enough. I'm afraid of letting you down. I'm afraid of reaching the end of our lives with regrets." He paused, then continued with renewed strength. "But I'm not afraid of tomorrow, because whatever happens, we face it together." Elena snuggled closer, fitting herself against the familiar contours of his body. As sleep began to claim them, the sound of the river merged with their breathing, lullaby of adventure yet to come. Dawn broke over Aguas Calientes, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold, aimed to set the surrounding mountains ablaze. Alberto and Elena awoke to this celestial alarm, their bodies stiff from yesterday's journey, their spirits soaring with anticipation. Breakfast was a quiet affair, both of them too nervous to eat much. They sipped their coca tea, local remedy for altitude sickness, while Mateo briefed them on the day ahead. "We'll take the bus up to the entrance," he explained, his voice low and reassuring. "From there, we'll move at your pace. Remember, this is your journey. There's no rush." The bus ride up the switchback road to Machu Picchu was both terrifying and exhilarating. With each turn, the drop-offs became more precipitous, vegetation more lush. Elena clutched Alberto's hand, her knuckles white. "We've raised 3 children," Alberto murmured, a hint of amusement in his voice. "Surely we can handle a little bus ride." But all thoughts of fear vanished the moment they stepped off the bus. There, shrouded in early morning mist, stood Machu Picchu. The ancient citadel clung to the mountainside, stone terraces and enigmatic buildings emerging from the cloud forest, a city in the sky. "Oh, Alberto," Elena breathed, tears welling in her eyes. "We're really here." For a moment, they simply stood, overwhelmed by the realization of a dream days in the making. Then, with a shared nod, they took their first steps into the complex. The climb was arduous. Every step was a battle against gravity and time. The thin air made their lungs burn, and their legs, despite months of training, felt like lead. But with each terrace they ascended, each ancient stone they touched, curious transformation took. It was Elena who noticed it. As they paused to catch their breath, she looked at Alberto and saw not the man worn by years and illness, but the bright-eyed dreamer she had fallen in love with all those years ago. His back was straighter, his movements more sure. And in his eyes burned a fire she hadn't seen in years. "What is it?" Alberto asked, catching her gaze. Elena smiled, reaching out to cup his cheek. "You look young," she said simply. Alberto laughed, the sound echoing off the ancient stones. "I feel young," he replied, covering her hand with his own, "like I could conquer the world." And so they continued, their steps growing lighter with each passing hour. Mateo, who had started the day hovering anxiously nearby, now found himself struggling to keep up with the elderly couple's pace. They explored the Temple of the Sun, marveling at the precision of Incan stonework. In the sacred plaza, they stood in awe of the panoramic views of the surrounding mountains. At the Intihuatana stone, believed by the Incas to be a hitching post for the sun, they paused for a moment of quiet reflection. It was here, at the highest point of their climb, that Alberto turned to Elena. Without a word, he took her in his arms and began to dance. There was no music save for the whisper of the wind and the distant call of birds, but they moved together with the grace of lifelong partners. Mateo watched in amazement as the couple swayed, oblivious to the curious stares of other tourists. In that moment, they were not 2 elderly people on a difficult journey, but 2 souls in perfect harmony with each other and their surrounding. As the sun began its descent, painting Machu Picchu in warm golden light, Alberto and Elena made their way to the guardhouse. This iconic viewpoint, featured in countless photographs, offered a sweeping vista of the entire complex. Hand in hand, they stood at the edge, drinking in the scene before them. The ancient city lay spread out below, its secrets and mysteries still intact after centuries. In the distance, the Urubamba River wound its way through the sacred valley, a silver ribbon tying past to present. "We did it, mi amor," Alberto said softly, his voice thick with emotion. We touched the sky. Elena leaned her head on his shoulder, her heart too full for words. In that moment, surrounded by the echoes of an ancient civilization and the tangible presence of their enduring love, they felt truly timeless. As the last rays of sunlight kissed the stones of Machu Picchu, Alberto and Elena began their descent. They moved slowly, reverently, each step a goodbye and a promise. For they knew that while they might leave this place, part of them, the dreamers, the adventurers, the eternal lovers, would remain forever, woven into the fabric of this mountain in the sky. The return to Lima was a homecoming in more ways than one. As Alberto and Elena stepped off the plane, they were greeted by a sea of familiar faces. Children, grandchildren, and even a few great-grandchildren, all eager to hear about their adventure. But it wasn't just their family who awaited them. Word of their journey had spread, carried on the winds of social media and local news. A small crowd of well-wishers had gathered at the airport, holding signs and cheering as the elderly couple emerged. Elena blushed at the attention, burying her face in Alberto's shoulder. But Alberto stood tall, his eyes shining with a mix of pride and humility. "We just climbed a mountain," he said to a reporter who thrust a microphone in his face. The real heroes are the ones who climb mountains every day without recognition. In the days that followed, their story continued, ripple outward. Local newspapers ran features on the couple, praising their determination and zest for life. A national morning show invited them for an interview, where they charmed the hosts and audience alike with their wit and warmth. But it was the impact on their own family that mattered most to Alberto and Elena. Their grandchildren looked at them with new eyes, seeing not just elderly relatives, but adventurers and dreamers. Lucia, the granddaughter who had unknowingly reignited their dream, was especially moved. "Abuela," she said one evening as the family gathered for dinner, "I always thought dreams were for young people. But you and Abuelo showed me that it's never too late." Elena reached out and squeezed her granddaughter's hand. "Mi querida," replied, her voice soft but strong. "The secret is to never stop dreaming. Age may change our bodies, but it need not change our spirits." As the weeks passed, Alberto and Elena found themselves becoming reluctant role models for active aging. Senior centers invited them to give talks, and they received letters from strangers all over Peru, thanking them for the inspiration. But fame was never their goal. Instead, they focused on the renewed energy their adventure had brought to their lives. They started a weekly hiking club for seniors in their neighborhood. They took dance classes, rekindling the grace they had discovered atop Machu Picchu, and they began planning their next adventure, a trip to the Galapagos Islands, another dream long deferred. 1 year to the day after their Machu Picchu climb, Alberto and Elena gathered their entire extended family for a special dinner. As they all sat around the table, Alberto stood, raising his glass for a toast. "A year ago," he began, his voice quavering slightly with emotion, "Elena and I stood atop a mountain that we had dreamed of climbing for most of our lives. It was a moment of triumph, yes, but also a moment of revelation." Paused, looking around at the faces of his loved one. "We realized that the greatest adventure isn't found on a distant mountaintop or in an ancient ruin. It's found in the lives we build, the love we share, and the dreams we dare to chase." Raised his glass higher. "Family, to love, and to dreams that never grow old." As the family cheered and clinked glasses, Elena caught Alberto's eye across the table. In that moment, they were transported back to the misty heights of Machu Picchu, to the feeling of standing on top of the world. But this time, they realized they weren't just touching the sky. They were soaring beyond it, carried aloft by the love that surrounded them and the legacy they had created. Their journey to Machu Picchu had been more than just a trip. It was a testament to the enduring power of dreams, the strength found in love, and the adventures that await those brave enough to reach for them, no matter their age. As the evening wound down and the family began to depart, filled with good food and even better memories, Alberto and Elena stood in the doorway, arms around each other. They watched as their legacy, not just their children and grandchildren, but the dreams they had inspired, spread out into the world. And in the fading light of day, they shared a silent promise: to keep dreaming, keep loving, and to keep climbing, whatever mountains life might bring. As Alberto and Elena's story fades from view, we invite you to reflect on your own dreams deferred. What mountain awaits your ascent? What legacy will you leave? Remember, never too late to reach for the sky. If this story has touched you, inspired you, or simply made you smile, we ask that you share it. Spread the message that age is no barrier to adventure, that love can conquer any height, and that the greatest journeys are those we undertake together. Subscribe to our channel for more stories that celebrate the indomitable human spirit. And remember, every day is an opportunity to start climbing your own Machu Picchu. The view from the top is waiting for you.